All right. So just pre-observation conference here. Just wanted to thank you for doing the conference form and just preparing your lesson plan and making it so detailed so I can get a good understanding. Just to understand your intentions for the lesson. Just understand more about the students here that you're going to support, and then just the different strategies that you're using to um, help with that comprehension and understanding. I just appreciate how detailed it was, just so that I can make sure that my feedback is going to be meaningful and direct for what you want to get out of the lesson. I just want to reiterate, it's not a I gotcha or I'm going through a checklist here. It's just about your professional growth, and I think we've kind of established that in our prior conversations. I just want to support that. I'm just here to listen, ask questions, and kind of understand how I can best support you.
Okay,
So I just have a few questions on engagement differentiation and your
sure.
assessment here. The first, so I see that you are going to use a game of domino top draw to kind of focus on the adding within 20.
hmm
Um, are there any particular challenges that you foresee going into this? Uh,
Yeah. Um, Kids are at very different stages at this point. So the dominoes really help because they have the dots on them. So for kids who really are struggling or aren't ready to be adding one, two, three, or more, it helps them because they'll just count all the dots.
yeah.
But then it also is helpful because for kids who are at a different level, they can, find the bigger number and count on from that. We have worked with adding one like in our head. When you add one, it's just the next number. Or if you add two, you just have to count two more because we have counted by twos before. And then we started working with the double facts. And so some of them will know the doubles when they see like three and three or six and six. But there's several at different levels.
Yeah.
So having the dots helps me with those who really aren't ready to add yet, which I do have some. But then having the dots and, finding like, okay, let's find the bigger number, or even, adding the one, two, or three with our fingers. I just have kind of tried to teach them to hold that up and count on after that number and touch their chin.
Okay.
Um, just some of those strategies, the dots really help because everyone can do it.
Yeah, for sure. I noticed that from kind of trying to get an idea of what it might be, that it seems like it will be an excellent kind of hands-on and visual. So that's kind of where I was thinking. And then I also see that you referenced in the standard here, you may think about creating like equivalents from easier known sums. So
Yes.
for instance, like 7 plus 6, you might think about it that double. 6 plus 6 is 12, and one more would make 13.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
that's a great strategy that we try to use.
Okay.
Yes.
So you're kind of a
And
lot.
some are ready for that, so that's a great suggestion.
Okay. Um, why did so you chose domino top draw just for that hands-on aspect, and then it's kind of allows for different levels.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Um, during the discussion and demonstration, what cues or student responses will you kind of look for from those strategies to kind of know they're grasping it?
Yeah, sometimes I'll say, what are you thinking in your head to know how they're getting their answer, and to know whether they're just counting the dots or if they do have the strategy down. Like sometimes they'll just say, "Why, I just know it," and that just means tells me that they already know how to add that. It's like they can't really explain it because they know it already.
Yeah.
And that's often true when they're adding one, maybe sometimes two, or sometimes when I ask that, they'll say, well, they might say something like you just said, well, I know 6 plus 6 is 12, so 6 plus 7, that's one more. So they might even say that to me, but it gives me an idea of what strategy they're using to do it. And I do like to say, how did you find that answer. What's your brain thinking?
Yeah, getting that kind of compelling question to get them
Yes, yeah.
thinking
Did I
about.
answer your
Yeah,
question? Okay.
for sure. So, how will you handle students who kind of struggle to focus during that demonstration?
Yeah, that's a tough one in first grade, and I have quite a few, and that's an even bigger struggle this year.
Okay.
Um, a lot of reminders, we need to be focusing, we need to be looking. You have to be writing this down because we're also going to be writing the number sentence down. So I do tell them that. I do have an associate, so she walks around and helps, especially two kids, but also more than that going on. And just kind of, uh, I try to do it not really a nonverbal reminder, but are we paying attention, and not
Okay.
not always calling the individual out,
Oh,
although I can and do sometimes.
okay.
But are we paying attention? Are you writing it down? And then I'll say, I'm going to have you turn this in. So you better make sure that you're getting this on your paper and writing. So
That seems
some of
to.
those things I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
And also ahead of that is placement of students in the classroom.
Okay.
So I've got a front row full of students who need to focus.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that's also like that's come as the year goes on. I keep moving different people to the front.
Perfect. I'll make sure. Yeah, I remember that when I come in for the observation, just to remember that up here will be an area to kind of focus on, just to make sure that everything's kind of flowing. You've kind of already talked about informal checks just to make sure that they're playing the game correctly,
Yeah.
just with those repeating directions. I think you were pretty clear on that. Differentiation and support here. When some students are using those fewer dominoes, like you talked about, that they're not quite adding up to 10 yet, how will you determine if they're ready to kind of move on to try more?
Um, Usually by how quickly they can answer it and what their strategy is.
Okay.
Like if they're just counting dots, they're probably not ready. And I do have some of those. That's a very tricky thing in teaching because you kind of move on no matter what.
Mhm.
But I have to watch that, and I have an intervention time at the end of the day, about 15 or 20 minutes. And I use that information for that.
Okay.
Although I have students who we took the math fast test, and unfortunately, I had two that scored at 0 and one that scored at 1. So actually, the interventions I'm working on are actually much lower than even that.
Okay.
So it's very hard, but we do need to get to that. So a lot of times I kind of do the little bit of instruction as we're going,
Okay.
like, okay, if we're adding 1, we need to put up one finger, which number's bigger, and then count on after that number because they want to start, if it's 5 plus 1, they want to start at 5. And then they say 5, and they have to get, so that's a skill in and of itself
Yeah.
to get them to count on after that number.
Okay.
So, but it's tricky because the math doesn't stop
Yeah.
for all of those kids. And yet I'm trying to go back and work with them at the skill they need to be learning at. And they are actually getting help from an interventionist also
Okay.
on that. So we're both doing a little bit, but it's tricky.
For sure. Okay.
Yeah.
So really helpful to know that you're kind of doing your assessment and understanding inside that group. So you kind of know when we come back to when you're in class where they're already at. You're not
Right.
kind of making those assessments on the fly.
Right.
Okay. Um, are there moments you anticipating kind of trying to step in, or are you kind of letting him have this class time to kind of really work on what you've done in those small groups, or you kind of keep close scaffold by them and jump in when you need to, or
I try to make it a success for them, especially in the setting of a classroom in front of peers.
for sure?
And so I try to get them to answer without help first. But if they can't, yes, I start scaffolding it. And you might try something and they might not get it. So then you might have to try something else. Like I think sometimes I've even had to like help them get the right number on their finger to count on, or
Yeah.
something like that, And sometimes I even have to model it like, okay, it's 3 plus 2. So I put 2 fingers up, put 2 fingers up. Now we have to count on after 3. What number comes after 3? And then, so that's the first number you'll say, but I want them to be successful as much as possible
For
in
sure.
front of their peers.
For sure. Get those quick wins so they get that
Yeah,
confidence and are
yeah,
able to kind of
because
keep replicating it.
otherwise they don't want to answer at all.
Yeah. Okay,
So,
perfect.
yeah,
I'm glad kind of setting that up for success there. And
yeah,
so kind of assessment here. We've kind of already talked about particular student behaviors that will show that assessment. Um, I'll make sure that I just kind of focus my attention, understanding, and on the gameplay. Are there any other behaviors or evidence that you want me to kind of look for other than what we have down here?
yeah.
Um,
I'm kind of struggling this year with a lot of blurters
okay.
in the classroom. And so that's been very challenging for me. Um, and it's hard because it feels like, even as many years as I've taught, that it feels like some blurting is okay. And then it's like, no, it's not okay. So I have to be careful as a teacher. Like, okay, am I letting it go sometimes? And am I not letting it go sometimes? Because we've had some trouble with that with this particular class.
Okay.
So I have to do a lot of, okay, make sure you're listening, make sure you're not blurting out your answers. And sometimes I have to be careful because they like to blurt for the person that's struggling to get the answer. And I'm always like, nobody helped you with your answer, and we all like to get our answer on our own. So I have to say some things like that. But that's been a big struggle. Sometimes if it's one or two, it's more doable. But I feel like I have maybe 4 or 5
Okay.
blurters that I'm struggling with still. It's still early in the year. Often I like to think that after a month of September, we've gotten a lot of that taken care of. But because we're in October and we're still struggling
Okay.
with that.
Sounds good. So feedback, I'll make sure that I have my kind of written notes and discussion, and I'll do my best to have specific examples.
Okay.
For instance, like the number of kids, names. Is that okay to
Yep,
have specific names in
absolutely.
there? Just so it's gives it more. Hopefully, it'll be more helpful to have those specific examples and not just very vague. So I'll make sure I'm kind of descriptive in what I say and the students that I mention. Um, just want to thank you for walking me through your presentation and your
Sure.
thinking, giving me a better understanding. So when I come in, I know exactly what's going to happen, exactly what to look for. Uh, it's been clear that you put a lot of time into this and are very considerate for the different levels that you have in the class. So I appreciate that. Gives me good feeling knowing that you're supporting your students and teaching them to the standard here. I just want to confirm that I have down here Monday at 11:10. We'll meet and go over the post observation conference, and I'll just focus on those highlights and have that evidence so that it's useful and specific to you.
Yeah,
Um,
that'll be great. I look forward to it. We can always use help.
okay,
So any advice you can give me will be great.
okay.
So
I appreciate being so open
yeah,
to feedback. Like I said, and again, it's not a gotcha. I'm here to help.
no, every class is different. So there's a new challenge every year. So it doesn't matter how many years you've taught, you have a new challenge and you pull out your toolbox,
Yeah,
but it doesn't always work.
for sure.
And it doesn't, the one kid that might be having the same trouble that somebody else had, that tool doesn't work for that kid. So you're always on the lookout for
Okay,
help and what you can do to make it better.
okay, great. I'm looking forward to it, and we'll meet
All
afterwards.
right, that
All
sounds
right,
great. Thank
thank
you.
you.